Every day, new technology is being produced for our ever-changing way of life, coming from new cars, new phones, new computers, new televisions, and people are buying them. But what's happening to our old devices? Where do they go? They don't just disappear. They are broken down and recycled, and in this process produces hazardous waste from the chemicals released inside of them. Electronic waste is one of the fastest growing problems in our world. It's also one of the most ignored. Lots of these devices contain toxic substances that have an adverse impact on human health and the environment if not handled correctly. We as consumers have little to no idea where our electronics goes once we dispose of them, let alone what's inside them. First, I want to discuss with you what exactly electronic waste is. Second, I want to examine the consequences of electronic waste. And lastly, I wanted to discuss the recommended actions to solve this problem. Electronic waste, or e-waste, is described as old end-of-life electronic appliances such as computers, laptops, televisions, DVD players, mobile phones, and which have all been disposed by the original users. There is a big variety of products that contain 100 different types of substances that follow under hazardous and non-hazardous categories, such as iron and steel, which constitutes of 50% of the electronic waste, followed by plastics, non-ferrous metals, and other substances. These are broadly classified as non-hazardous due to their amount used. The presence of elements like lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, psyllium, and flame retardants beyond the specific threshold quantities are classified as hazardous waste. And this hazardous waste has been handled improperly time and time again. The adverse effects of e-waste on human and environmental health are having serious repercussions for those in proximity to places where electronic waste is recycled, such as computers, which are one of the most toxic items recycled because they contain the most hazardous chemicals, such as lead, cadmium, mercury, chloride, and other phosphor compounds. When these substances are released specifically in these computers, like lead, barium, and other heavy metals, leach into groundwater and release toxic phosphor. There are also air emissions of the same substances, tin and lead contamination of immediate environment, including surface and groundwaters. Hydrocarbons, heavy metals, bromated substances are discharged directly into rivers and banks, which acidifies the river, destroying fish and the flora. Hydrocarbon ashes are also discharged into air, water, and the soil surrounding them. Not only does this affect the environment, but also the people whose job it is to break down these devices. Most of the people working in these recycling centers are the poor, who have very low literacy levels and therefore have little awareness of the hazardous e-waste toxins they are handling. There are a sizable number of women and children who are also working in this sector who are even more prone to these consequences. Which brings me to what I want to last discuss, the recommended actions. For example, India has one of the greatest impacts of electronic waste, not only due to this country's own contribution, but because it's also the dumping ground of electronic waste for other developed countries. So thankfully, there are organizations within India that are working on these issues, such as Knowledge Bank for Electronic Waste Management in India, the Asian Pro Eco program supported by the European Commission, who is dedicated to the environmental performance in Asian economic sectors due to their high production of these specific devices. There are also the European Union member states of South Asia, Southeast Asia, and China, who promote sustainable investment trade between all of those countries. Some broader actions are technical interventions, which is basically a precautionary principle where they fix the product design and engineering interventions inside of the products, therefore using either less hazardous chemicals, not as many, or different substitutions for these chemicals. There's also the restructuring of recycling, the policy level interventions that are provided with clear definition of electronic waste regulation, or other policies which implement recycling options provided by the specific manufacturer. For example, Apple also has a program where you can turn in your devices to them so they can dispose of your products correctly. In conclusion, the dumping of electronic waste will never stop, but it can be controlled. This issue is having severe effects on our environment, and because of these damaging substances, they have greatly affected the humans' abiotic and biotic factors of these environmental places.